This resolution is a manifest injustice against my country, the main victim of a clear act of aggression. It distorts the realities on the ground and deliberately ignores the root causes of the current crisis. Make no mistake, today it is Iran, tomorrow it could be any other sovereign state.
In the past day, the Iranian regime has fired missiles and drones not only at Israel, but across the region, at Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Cyprus. And this is what the regime is doing before it has nuclear weapons. Imagine what it would do if it had them. This is not just about the joint US-Israel campaign. This is a regime attacking its neighbors.
In the name of God, the compassionate and merciful, colleagues, at the outset, I must express our profound regret over the Council's action today. This is a deeply regrettable day for the Security Council and for the international community. Today's adoption is a serious setback to the Council's credibility and leaves a lasting stain on its record. Today's action represents a blatant misuse of the Security Council mandate in pursuit of the political agendas of the certain members. The very state responsible for the brutal war of aggression against my country, the regime of the United States, sits on the other side of this chamber as President of the Council, abusing its position while obstructing every effort to bring an end to this barbaric war against the Iranian people and preventing the Council from fulfilling its charter-based responsibilities. Let me make it clear. This resolution is a manifest injustice against my country, the main victim of a clear act of aggression. It distorts the realities on the ground and deliberately ignores the root causes of the current crisis. The very purpose of this biased and politically motivated text, which was pushed by Israeli regime and the United States, is clear: to reverse the roles and position of victims and aggressors. It rewards the regimes of the United States and Israel, which have violated the UN Charter and committed acts of aggression. In doing so, it established impunity and sent a wrong message to the international community, emboldening the aggressors to commit further crimes. Accordingly, we do not recognize the Council's action today. We consider it unjust and unlawful, inconsistent with the United Nations Charter and international law, and an action that completely disregards the established principles governing determination of acts of aggression and breach of the peace. Make no mistake, today it is Iran, tomorrow it could be any other sovereign state. We thank Russia and China for their constructive efforts. Those members that voted in favor of this resolution, particularly the European members of the Council, including France, United Kingdom, Greece, Denmark, and Latvia, have demonstrated that their repeated claims of defending the UN Charter and the principles of the international law are nothing more than empty words and hollow rhetoric. These members lacked even the minimal courage to acknowledge the perpetrators of the aggression, Israel and the United States. While concerning the violation of the Charter and international law and speaking of the international peace and security, by deliberately ignoring the flagrant violation of the most fundamental principles of the UN Charter, the prohibition of the use of force, these members have once again shown that for them, respect for the Charter and international law is selective and subordinate to political agenda. The hypocritical and irresponsible conduct once again demonstrate that political consideration take precedence over their professed commitment to international law and the UN Charter. It is evident that these countries are simply implementing political instruction from Washington rather than exercising independent judgment and decision. Regrettably, some members distorting the reality and facts on the grounds and made a cynical and blatant attempt to blame Iran and accuse and condemn Iran while ignoring the root causes of the current situation, whitewashing the US and Israeli heinous crimes and military aggression, especially the massacre of 170 school girls in Minab, as it was Iran that initiated this war. We categorically and strongly reject all the baseless and politically motivated accusations made by some members against my country, which are entirely devoid of any legal foundation. The aim of this accusation is clear: to distort the reality, deflect the attention of the international community from war crimes and crimes against humanity that have been and are being committed against the people of Iran by the Israeli regime and the United States. But the facts prove otherwise and speak loudly and clearly. Against this backdrop, I now wish to emphasize the following points. First, the root cause of the current situation are clear and simple. On 28 February, the United States and Israel regime launched a military attack against the Islamic Republic of Iran in flagrant violation of Article 2, Paragraph 4 of the United Nations Charter and the preventory norm prohibiting aggression. This is an illegal, illegitimate, and unprovoked war began with the cowardly terrorist assassination of the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, the highest official of the sovereign member state of the United Nations, along with several senior state officials, and resulted in the deaths and injuries of thousands of civilians. This aggression was accompanied by coordinated attacks on both military and civilian infrastructure, including schools, hospitals, residential buildings, sports facilities, public service centers, and relief facilities across the country. These acts constitute grave violation of international law and serious breach of international humanitarian law. Senior officials of the aggressor states, including the President of the United States and criminal Prime Minister of Israel, have publicly acknowledged and justified this attack, thereby openly admitting responsibility for this unlawful act of aggression. Since 28 February, the continued military strike by the United States and the Israeli regime have martyred more than 1,348 civilians, including women and children, more than 17,000 civilians injured, and destroyed or damaged 19,734 civilian sites. These include 16,191 residential homes, 1,617 commercial and service centers, 77 medical and pharmaceutical facilities, 65 schools and educational institutions, 16 Red Cross buildings, and multiple energy infrastructure facilities. The scale and systematic nature of this attack clearly constitute war crimes and crime against humanity. Second, in response to this deliberate and unjustified aggression, the Islamic Republic of Iran has exercised and continues to exercise its inherent right of self-defense in accordance with Article 51 of the United Nations Charter to defend its sovereignty and territorial integrity. And in light of the failure of the United Nations Security Council to discharge its duty and responsibilities under the Charter of the United Nations, has undertaken necessary and proportionate defensive operation against the bases and facilities of the aggressors in the region. Such actions are lawful under international law and have been clearly and repeatedly warned of in advance through various channels and at different levels. Our response is lawful, necessary, and proportionate. Iran targets only the military objective of the aggressors. Our assessment indicates that some of these incidents may have resulted from interception by the United States defense system, which could have diverted from intended military targets. Third, since the beginning of this aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran by the United States and Israeli regime, the aggressors have also used the territories and facilities of certain third states in the region to launch unlawful military attack. Under the fundamental principle of international law, states are prohibited from knowingly allowing their territory to be used directly or indirectly to cause damage to other states. In addition, UN General Assembly Resolution 3314 of 14 December 1974, Article 3F, has clearly categorized and recognized that the action of a state in allowing its territory, which it has placed at the disposal of another state, to be used by that state for perpetrating an act of aggression against the third state as an act of aggression. Furthermore, as a principle of international law emanating from the jus cogens character of the prohibition of aggression, states must undertake all necessary measures to prevent foreign armed forces based in their territory from committing acts of aggression against other states and must not facilitate or support such acts. It is evident that in the event of the breach of this fundamental obligation, a state whose territory has been used to carry out acts of aggression against a third state bears international legal responsibility, including responsibility for reparation of direct and indirect damage resulting from such attack. Similarly, the measures claimed to have been taken by the United Kingdom and certain other states outside the region under pretext of a so-called right of individual or collective self-defense are devoid of any legal basis and are wholly unjustifiable under international law. Such action may themselves constitute acts of aggression. Moreover, these states have deliberately refrained from identifying the original aggressors, namely the United States and Israeli regime, and have in effect attempted to reverse the roles of victims and aggressor. Fourth, the aggressors, in particular the United States, are under an obligation to make full reparation for the injury caused by the ongoing violation against Iran and its citizens, including any damage incurred. Furthermore, the individual criminal responsibility of the President of the United States and any other U.S. official and individuals involved in grave breach of international humanitarian law, including for directing deliberate attack against civilians and launching willful attacks against civilian objects, is beyond doubt. Fifth, the Islamic Republic of Iran remains committed to maintaining friendly relations with the countries in the Persian Gulf region based on mutual respect, the principle of good neighborliness, and respect for each other's sovereignty and territorial integrity. Iran re-emphasized that its defense operation targeting United States military bases and facilities in the region are in no way against the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the regional countries. Also, the Israeli regime has succeeded in dragging the United States into a regional conflict. Iran's relations with neighbors are rooted in long-standing historical, cultural, and geographical ties. Once the current tension diminish, Iran and its neighbors countries will inevitably return to their traditional relation of cooperation, mutual respect, and good neighborliness. Iran, as a co-founder of the UN and responsible member, has consistently honored its obligation, respected international law and freedom of navigation in the Strait of Hormuz, and the claim that Iran has closed the strait is simply untrue. Meanwhile, Iran will never abandon its right under international law to protect its sovereignty, territorial integrity, national and vital interests as it deems necessary. Sixth, the Council must confront the real source of the threat to the regional and international peace and security and act without delay to stop this bloody war against the Iranian people. It must compel the aggressors, the United States and Israel, to immediately cease all military attacks against Iran, including against civilians and civilian infrastructure, and ensure full accountability for these grave violations of international humanitarian law and war crimes. Thank you.
In the past day, the Iranian regime has fired missiles and drones not only at Israel, but across the region, at Israel, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Bahrain, Oman, Iraq, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Cyprus. And this is what the regime is doing before it has nuclear weapons. Imagine what it would do if it had them. This is not just about the joint US-Israel campaign. This is a regime attacking its neighbors. That is why we welcome the initiative of the Gulf Cooperation Council states condemning these attacks. Their message is clear. Targeting civilians is wrong. Targeting cities is wrong. And Iran must stop. But what we are seeing today did not begin 2 weeks ago for Israel. It did not begin on February 28. It did not begin last year during the 12-day war. It began all the way back in 1979, when the regime in Tehran made the destruction of the US and Israel parts of its mission, ideology. For 47 years, this regime has armed terror organizations across the Middle East. It has spread violence across the region. It has targeted Israeli civilians through cowardly proxy attacks. And today, it races toward nuclear capability while building the missiles to deliver it. This is not a new crisis. It is a result of decades of aggression. For decades, the international community tried diplomacy. Negotiations were attempted. Channels remained open, but diplomacy requires honesty, not what we just heard from the representative from Iran. Iran used diplomacy as cover. While diplomats spoke, centrifuges span. While negotiations were held, the regime fortified its nuclear program. Facilities were buried deep underground. Complexes were carved into mountains to shield them from consequences. At the same time, Iran rebuilt its ballistic missile program. Before this joint operation began, Iran was again producing dozens of ballistic missiles every month. Missiles capable of carrying warheads weighing up to 1 ton. Missiles capable of reaching targets across the Middle East and even to parts of Europe. Iran has enriched uranium to 60%. It possesses more than 460 kilograms at that level alone, an amount when they negotiated with Special Envoy Witkoff, they admitted that they have this amount and they can produce 11 nuclear bombs. They confirmed they control this stockpile, and that was the starting point of the negotiation position. No civilian nuclear program requires enrichment to 60%. None. And peaceful nuclear programs do not hide critical facilities. deep inside mountains. Yet here at the UN, we hear a very different story. We just heard a very long speech. The representative of Iran tells us their nuclear program is exclusively peaceful. Ambassador Iravani says Iran is only targeting military sites. You just heard him. He said it. Mr. President, that is simply not true. Mr. Iravani, you and your regime are lying to all of us. You say you are only targeting military targets. How can you say that? We are not stupid. I know it. I know it because your missiles target cities in Israel where my daughters are now, where my mother lives. And the representatives from the Gulf states sitting here today can tell you the same thing. They have seen the cowardly attacks on civilians, airports. Iranian missiles and drones have struck ports, infrastructure, hotels across the region. These are not military targets. These are civilian sites. And you think if you write a letter every day repeating the same lies, people will start to believe you. It will not work for you. Over the past week, Iran's representative has sent letter after letter to the Security Council. In fact, here they are, 15 letters, one at least every day, each repeating the same accusations, letters that even blame Israel and the US. You know, you have the audacity to call us terrorists. Mr. Iravani, before making such accusations, you might want to look in the mirror. The regime you represent fires missiles at civilians across the region and then writes letters claiming victimhood. The only letter you should write is an apology to the Iranian people, and maybe after you should request a political asylum. That's the only letter you should write. Mr. President, peaceful regimes do not enrich uranium to 60% and stockpile hundreds of kilograms of it. Peaceful regimes do not hide nuclear facilities deep inside mountains. And peaceful regimes do not build ballistic missiles capable of carrying 1-ton warheads across the region and into Europe. Israel remains committed to protecting our people, defending our region, and ensuring that the Iranian regime never acquires nuclear weapons. Thank you.